going to do is we're going to move on to section 4.4. We're going to prove triangles are congruent by side, angle, side, and HL. Yesterday, we took a look at one way to prove that triangles are congruent, and that was side, side, side. So if you remember that, if I had one triangle and another triangle, as long as all the sides were congruent to the other triangle of the other one with their corresponding parts, then the triangles were congruent. Today what we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to look at side, angle, side. Now the key with side, angle, side is the word included. And what included means is that it's almost like it's hugged by the other parts. So for example, when it says T is included, angle T is included between TX and TD. If I take a close look at this, here's TX, here's TD, and this angle T is included. It's in between those two sides. And so you're going to have a quiz, you're going to have a test where they're going to ask you the difference between like a side, angle, side, and something else. What makes this one different is the two sides hug or on either side of that angle, so that angle T is included. That's what makes side, angle, side. If you look at the one underneath it, DX, line segment DX is included between angle D and angle X. If I take a look at that, here's angle D, here's angle X, and that side, DX, is included. Again, that means that it's being hugged by those two angles. So when you see the word included, what it means is that middle is hugged by those other two parts, whether it's two sides or it's two angles. So when we're looking at side, angle, side, if two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. In other words, I've got a side that's congruent. I have an angle that's congruent. And then I have the other side that's next to that angle. Then it's considered side, angle, side. Okay? So again, we can say triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle LMO. Letters are important, and where they're placed is very important. So just FYI, make sure that you're naming them according to their corresponding parts. Let's take a look at this first example. Again, we're always going to start our proofs off with given, and please number your proofs. So I've got line segment YZ is congruent to LZ. I'm going to go given. And then the other piece that's really important is that you mark up your picture. I can't tell you how important that is. So YZ is congruent to LZ. And then number two, I've got XZ is congruent to line segment ZM, and that's given. So I've got this side is congruent to this side. And like we've done in the past, it's a good idea. I've got one side, I've got another side, I've got two of my three. And so I can look at this and I can go, well, let's see, could I say that this side is congruent to this side? I can't. In the past, that would be like a reflexive and they would touch and it would work and I could do side, side, side. I cannot do that on this one because they don't touch. So really what I'm looking at then is a side, angle, side. And if you look carefully, this angle is congruent to this angle because of vertical angles. Now, be very careful when we're naming them. I can't just do angle Z because you're going to notice that there's actually 4 angles there that encompass angle Z. So you need to be really careful with naming these. So number 3, I'm going to go angle X, Z, Y. Z needs to be in the middle because it's my vertex, is congruent to M, Z, L, to make sure those corresponding parts are together. And it's vertical angles congruent. And you need to make sure to put the congruent. So now you're going to notice that I've got my angle. I've got two sides that hug that angle. So I can go ahead and I can go number 4, triangle X, Y, Z is congruent to triangle. Again, make sure the corresponding parts work. It would be M, L, Z. And I can go ahead and write that up here. And the reason being would be side, angle, side. So now when we have that final reason, it's going to be either side, 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 or it's going to be side, angle, side. And again, you need 3 things for that to happen. All right, now we're going to move on to the third theorem or postulate. It's HL, and that stands for hypotenuse leg. So if I'm talking about a hypotenuse and I'm talking about a leg, I'm going to be working with right triangles, and that's really key. Now, just like side, 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 and side, angle, side, there were 3 pieces of information. I had to have 3 sides, or I had to have a side, an angle, and a side. Even though I'm dealing with hypotenuse leg, I still have to have 3 things. The first thing that I need to have, and this is so important, is I need to make sure that I have right triangles. Now, what they'll do is they'll give me a right angle, which is fine. I need that. But what I must have is a right triangle. So there's a step there that you need to include before you can say something is hypotenuse leg. And then the second thing is a hypotenuses are congruent, and then I have a pair of legs are congruent. So for this example, you're going to notice that they gave me right angles. I would have to make sure that I justify having right triangles. And then I have a leg. It could be this leg or this leg, but they chose the other one. And then there's this leg. And then finally, there is my hypotenuse. And again, the hypotenuse is the side that's opposite the right angle, and it is also the longest. So this is the hypotenuse. All right, let's move on to a proof. We're going to go ahead and start with our given. CD is congruent to EA. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that's given. And I'm going to mark up my picture. So CD and EA. Okay? So that's one thing. I got a side. That's a good thing. I still don't know if it's going to be side, 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 angle, side, or HL, but I've got something there. It's looking pretty good. The next given is AD, line segment, is the perpendicular bisector of line segment CE. And there should be a little line segment over the top of that. And that's given. Now, be really careful with that. That thing has 2 great pieces of information. One thing that it gives you is perpendicular. The X thing that they give you is bisector. There's 2 big pieces, even though it's just one sentence. So now they are saying, I got a bisector. So because I have a bisector, I'm going to highlight. It says it's a perpendicular bisector. So AD is a perpendicular bisector, meaning it's cutting that CE in half. And I choose to not put just a dot there like I've done in the past, but actually highlight that line. Now we're going to go to number 3. Angle CBD and angle EBA are right angles. Okay, and I know that because definition of perpendicular lines. So they give you perpendicular lines. They give you this perpendicular. We need to use it. Okay, so now it establishes that they're right triangle or right angles. Okay. Now what I can do is I can do a couple of different things. So you've got a little bit of a choice here. I am going to choose to look at triangle CBD and triangle EBA are right triangles. And I can do that because I have right angles. So this is definition of right triangles. And there's another one of my dots. Again, for HL, I have to establish that I have right triangles. So if they give me a right angle, the next step, I'm gonna do right triangles. Then I know for sure I've got that. Now I need to look at a leg. Well, I can do that with my bisector. I've got that bisector there. So I can go CB is congruent to EB. And I can do that because definition of bisector. Okay, again, they gave me that great information. I'm going to use it. And then finally, triangle CBD is congruent to triangle EBA. And I'm getting that from up here. And if I mark up my picture, I'm going to say HL because I've got three things there. I've got the hypotenuse, which was the blue. I've got right triangles, and then I have my leg. And so now I know I have HL. All right. Well, what if two legs of a right triangle are congruent to two right legs of another right triangle? How would we prove the triangles are congruent? Let's draw a picture of this. So it's saying that I have two right triangles. Okay, and I know they're right because they told me. And they're telling me that I've got one pair of legs congruent. I've got another pair of legs congruent. This would not be HL because you're going to notice that this is my hypotenuse and that's not congruent. But what I can do on that is I've got a side, I've got an angle, and I got a side. So just because you have right triangles, it does not mean it's HL all the time. They have to somehow give you enough information that you have a hypotenuse. All right, let's keep going on this one, and I'm going to do my givens. So AD is congruent to BC, and that's given. And I'm going to mark up my picture. And then angle DAB and angle BCD are right angles. That's also given. And you can kind of see it in the picture too. And then what I can do is I can come all the way down here because I know 5 triangle DAB is congruent to triangle BCD. That's what I'm trying to find here. So I know I can do that because of this. So now I've got a side. So this, I got that. Now if I have a right triangle, okay, if I take a look at this, there is something that's kind of obvious, and that's our reflexive property. So I'm going to go BD, line segment, is congruent to line segment BD, and that's reflexive. You notice that they gave me a hypotenuse with that. And so now I've got 2 of my 3 things for HL. And I'm going to go triangle DAB and triangle BCD are right triangles. And this would be definition of right triangles because right triangles have right angles. And then my final reason is HL. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my dot there. All right, so in the past, we had side, side, side. And today we added side, angle, side, and we also added HL. Again, you still need 3 things for these to work. And I, again, really encourage you, mark up that picture, okay? And then also doing the dots out front kind of help you make a checklist as to what you need.